Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hey guys, good morning and welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm Macy Renee and I am so excited to have you listening in from wherever you are in the world. I do think that you're really going to enjoy today's episode. We are going to be diving into emotionally immature parents and what this might have looked like if you did have emotionally immature parents or you do have emotionally immature parents, and then the results of it and things you need to be aware of and how it could be showing up in your life if this is something that you dealt with as you were being raised. I think, bringing awareness to this is so important because it helps you decide, once you're aware, it helps you decide if it's something you really want to change and shift. And I know for me, I grew up with emotionally immature parents / caregivers that really did their best. It's not to say in any part of this episode that they weren't trying their best. I don't want to dismiss that overall parenting is really, really hard. But the thing about it is that cycles can very easily be repeated without self-awareness. So that is my goal with this episode, is to raise your own awareness so you can decide what's important to you moving forward. So that way you can stop the cycle if you're in it, or change the trajectory of your own life and your children's life if you have children or if you want to have children, to where they won't have to go through the same thing if you can stop it now. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's talk about this. And I'm going to start with, I made a list, okay? I sat with this and I made a list of some common things that you will see and experience from emotionally immature parents. And I will go into depth when necessary of what this could mean or examples, because I know some of the best feedback that I get from you all as listeners of this podcast is that I help break things down in a way that makes it more understandable and digestible. And I really do appreciate you saying that because, it's one thing to be a consumer of information. It's another thing to be someone that practices the information they're consuming. There's a big difference. And I feel like being able to explain it in such a way that it's understandable to the masses allows for more implementation than just consuming. So it's a big deal. And I appreciate all of you that have given me feedback that I explain in such a way that it helps you understand more easily. Okay, so first thing on the list for emotionally immature parents that you might observe or have observed is that oftentimes they cannot control their temper. Okay, so you might have the parent that just loses their temper very easily. They become easily agitated and angry. They might be explosive in how they respond to things. And so as a child, that feels very scary to witness because you don't know if they're a ticking time bomb and what exactly is going to set them off. They cannot control their temper. Another thing is that they may not explain or teach. Like if you make a mistake, if you do something wrong, they might just react, and their reaction may not be like it. I don't want to say warranted, but their reaction may be very explosive compared to like being able to control their emotions well enough to just have a teaching moment with you or be able to explain without, again, going off the handle, okay, flying off the handle. An emotionally immature parent may also use fear tactics to control your behavior. Really quickly, something that I want to say is that as I go through this list, just notice within yourself if you become emotionally activated / triggered because you recognize that maybe you're doing some of these things in your own parenting. I just want to remind you that, this is humanness and that we don't know what we don't know. So, if you hear something that resonates and you're just not happy because you recognize that you're doing this, like, don't go beat yourself up or shame yourself. Just recognize, like, ooh, I feel a little called out. I don't love this about myself if I recognize that I do this. And now that I have the awareness, I get to decide if I want to change it. So as I'm talking about this list of emotionally immature parents / caregivers, I'm really thinking of it as our parents. So if you're listening now, I'm thinking of it as your caregiver, the person that raised you or helped to raise you. But you might find within this list that some of the cycles have subconsciously been passed down to you. And again, it wouldn't be helpful to shame yourself the remainder of this episode or beat yourself up about it. It's more so a really great compass and level of awareness that you can gain to figure out what you would like to work on after this, okay? So with that being said, where we left off is that sometimes emotionally immature parents will use fear tactics to control behavior. And what I think of with this is like when a kid's not listening and you're like, okay, I'm leaving, bye. It feels so innocent, right? Like to be like, I'm leaving, bye, and walking away and just leaving them be. And P.S., that's one example of probably 100 that I can give. It's just the first one that came to my mind, but it's instilling fear in them in order to control behavior. So rather than just be like, hey, we're leaving, come with me now, right? It's being like, okay, well, I'm leaving, bye. To which their nervous system becomes fearful that they're going to be abandoned. I know this sounds super severe, but this is what happens in the brain, okay? Is that their nervous system becomes rocked and like fearful, and that's usually why they comply. So they didn't comply because they were listening to your orders, right? Or your rules or the, I can't think of the phrase, like whatever you ask them to do. They're ignoring that. But when their body feels fear and then they react, it just shows that their behavior was shifted, not because of just them following the rules, right? It's because their nervous system felt fear and abandonment in that moment. And that fear is what led them to follow through with their, the rules or the orders or whatever, however you want to call it. I'll think of what I'm trying to say later, but just be mindful of that, right? It could also be fear tactics like a parent that does something very emotionally immature or wrong, just downright wrong, right? That they know is inappropriate, and then using fear again to control, like don't tell grandma or don't tell grandpa or don't tell anyone, right? Or they'll never let me see you again. They'll never let you come around me. When you are bonded with a caregiver and, even if they're doing things to you or around you that are inappropriate, there's still a level of attachment that you have because they're your safety net in the sense that they help care for you in some way, even if that's just keeping a roof over your head or food on the table, or companionship. And so even if there are inappropriate things that are transpiring, a lot of times adults do know that, even if they're emotionally immature. And if they're fearful of what the consequence will be, they will instill fear inside the child, again, to control behavior. So it's totally a sign of emotionally immature parenting. Okay, another one is using physical methods to control behavior. So I think of the parent that immediately loses their temper or has a hard time with impulse control, which is something that we work on in emotional intelligence. And rather than be able to cool themselves down and then respond to whatever activated them or triggered them, they immediately go into physical violence, right? Whether that is spanking or smacking or pinching or whatever it is, it's almost like it happens so quickly, right? It's like I couldn't bring my own anger down fast enough, and therefore I became reactionary and decided that being physical was the best way to control behavior and get the child to stop or whatever it is, okay? So that was definitely something that was used for us as kids. I honestly didn't get physically like hit on many times. Like it usually came after a warning or multiple warnings, like, hey, don't do that. You can't do that. If you continue to do that, you're going to get a whooping, right? Or we're going to come after you with a fly swatter. That would happen. And honestly, I straightened up behavior pretty quick when I knew it was going to get physical because I was afraid of the physical. I didn't want to feel physical pain. And so that, again, manipulated any kind of behavior that I would have because I didn't want the physical part of it. But you know, there are kids that don't respond much to the physical, and sometimes even the physical is a form of attention, and so they would like to have any form of attention if they have emotionally immature parents or parents that are in some way reserved, like don't give them enough attention that they want. They'll respond with, I'll do anything to get it, even if it is something physical, okay? Another sign of emotionally immature parents can be when they dismiss your emotions or experiences. So maybe you try to be open with them and you try to talk to them or ask them questions about things you want to better understand, and they totally dismiss you. They don't want to talk about it. They become very triggered, and rather than process their own emotions and feel their feelings, it's easier just to dismiss yours and, you know, make things maybe about themselves or turn it around on them versus focus on you. So that's a big thing. Like they will sometimes just completely dismiss what's going on for you and then make things about themselves because they can't handle the emotional talk of what you've got going on. They have to make it about themselves, okay? Another thing is that they may blame you or others for their reactions or their behavior. So I responded this way because you did this, okay? That's a big thing with emotionally immature parents. That is saying, like, rather than take accountability of my own emotions and my own triggers and controlling myself and then handling the situation, I reacted impulsively, maybe caused some damage to you or to other people or trauma experiences, whatever, but I did that because of you. Okay, that's a telltale sign. That's very different than being emotionally activated or triggered and maybe responding and then, you know, later on coming back and saying, I apologize for my behavior. I did not respond the way that I would have liked to, and I apologize for that. Or just simply working through your own emotional experiences, noticing your emotions, handling it, and then handling what you need to handle with your child, okay? So we may have been receivers of that, being blamed for the parent's bad mood or their reaction and saying, well, it was your behavior that caused me to do that. A parent withdrawing love when our behavior wasn't what they wanted. So some parents, emotionally immature parents, will withdraw affection and attention and closeness as a means of controlling behavior, right? So it's like, you're not being a good girl. You're not being a good boy. And I don't want to be around you if you're not going to be a good girl or good boy. And so they might withdraw and not want to hug on you, not want to cuddle with you, because they're not managing their own emotions of how it actually feels within their body when a kid is being a kid and maybe not listening, right? Testing their boundaries. Those are normal things in the brain's development. Not easy. I'm not condoning it either. Not condoning a child's, mischievous or, negative kind of behavior. However, we have to always observe what's happening within us. And so as kids ourselves, you might have experienced a parent withdrawing their love, affection, or attention when you didn't respond how they wanted you to. And that can be very painful, okay? Another sign of emotionally immature parents can be when you are having emotion yourself and they use language like you're being sensitive or dramatic to explain your reactions. Now, it is true that sometimes we can feel very sensitive and that sometimes we can have dramatic responses, okay? But if a parent is constantly dismissive of your emotions because they can't handle their own emotional experience while you're in that emotion, and then they're using like, oh God, I can't even talk to you, you're being so sensitive, or oh my God, you're so dramatic, let me just not talk to you anymore, right? Things like that can show emotional immaturity. And then lastly, they are often unable to hold space for your authenticity because they're not able to hold space for themselves either. Okay. And so I have done a lot of master classes or webinars on this where I teach people like basically when you're born into the world, you're 100% you and you show up as your truest self. But then you learn from the world and the people that you love and want to make happy how to be in order to make other people comfortable. So if you are a very bubbly, outgoing personality, but maybe your mom or dad can't handle just how bubbly and rambunctious or hyper, you kind of are in personality, they might tell you to tone it down a notch or, calm down. And repetitiveness of doing that where they withdraw because they can't handle you at 100%, you will slowly dial down to what they do find acceptable. And let's say that's being 90% yourself, okay? And you get positive reinforcement that when you're being 90% yourself, mom and dad really like that. And the problem with this is that you will go out into the world and continue to interact with people who may not be able to handle you as you are. And so you will keep dialing yourself down, and going down in percentage per se, like, oh gosh, my boyfriend or girlfriend can't handle me at, my 90%. They're still saying I'm too much for them and I'm too hyper and I'm too this and I'm too that. But I want them to love me, so I'll dial it down to 70%, right? And so then you start operating at 70%. Now, the thing about this is the more people in your life, the more people that you love and you want to impress, bosses, friends, family, partners, whatever, eventually you may get to the point where you're not operating at all as your authentic self. And that's when you will start feeling disconnected and confused and really not know who you are in the world anymore. So it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so let's talk about the result of this. So if that list for emotionally immature parents, if I'm speaking of it in terms of that's your caregiver, that is, the person that raised you, I want to talk about the result of what you may be experiencing in your life right now as a result of growing up in that environment around emotionally immature caregivers or parents, okay? You might be an avid people pleaser. And the reason being is because you had to learn how to tiptoe around other people's emotions to make sure that they were happy so that they weren't explosive. Because your system would get rocked and feel really, really bad every time their emotional reaction was big and strong and overpowering. So you become a people pleaser, right? You want to please, you want people to be happy. And what this really means is that you want to avoid any kind of negative or uncomfortable emotional reaction. So you will please to the point of losing yourself, right? Or doing things you don't always want to do in order to avoid the other person's emotional reaction. But what this also means, and the caveat to it, is that means you take responsibility for other people's emotional experiences, which is a very heavy thing to carry. And I want to let you know, also not your responsibility. It is not your responsibility to take on other people's emotional reactions. But if you are a people pleaser, you're doing that. And so if I had to guess, just because of how many clients I have coached, including getting coached myself as a client, you are probably exhausted and probably resentful and frustrated because you don't live authentically as to what you want. You don't answer to the things that you want in your life. You answer to make sure other people are happy first so that you don't get a poor negative emotional reaction from someone. And then you just deal with the negative emotions you feel inside yourself, which are very heavy, right? And that's what causes the resentment. So if you're people pleasing, this is likely the result of having emotionally immature adults at some point in your life that you had to tiptoe around to feel safe in your nervous system. Another result of this is being afraid to speak up and say your truth. Again, if you speak up and say your truth, somebody might be really upset by that, and that is scary for our nervous system, and so you suppress and suppress and suppress. Another example is anxious attachments to people or trauma bonds, right? You may really feel that you need people in your life in order to make it through. And even if they're a toxic person, you are so afraid of being left or having to learn how to be on your own that you form really toxic trauma bonds or anxious attachments because of the emotional manipulation that is happening within your relationships. And it's a telltale sign a lot of times of what hasn't been healed within yourself, okay? Another example is settling for less than you deserve. Okay, you may believe that you don't deserve much, and this could be from conditioning that you heard or grew up around within your emotionally immature environments. And so you don't think that you can have more or deserve more. And so you always end up in situations that feel really hard and heavy, and life tends to be kind of complicated, but it's not because of anything that has to do with deserving or not deserving. It's because of the settling, and the settling happens because of conditioning that you have been through and just subconscious patterns and thoughts that need to be broken, okay? They need to be brought into your awareness, and then they need to be broken if you choose to break them. Okay, another result is that you may dismiss or buffer your own emotions and maybe even other people's emotions unintentionally. So you may distract yourself from emotions with watching a lot of TV or scrolling on social media or drinking, smoking, doing drugs, taking pills, right? Sleeping with a lot of different people, shopping nonstop, overworking out, like anything to distract you from your emotions. So it's like things like that in moderation, sure. But if it's a constant need and a desire to be distracted, and you really use the language of, I like to be busy, I like to be busy, I don't like to sit around, it's really important for you to observe that you could be dismissing or buffering your own emotions. And if you don't hold this space for your own emotions, you are going to be unable to hold space for other people's emotions. So you may end up being in a cycle the same way that your emotionally immature caregiver or parent was, where they dismiss your emotions or experiences because they're not holding space for their own, okay? You may have the result of feeling a lot of anxiety, depression, have trouble communicating, or even forming/maintaining relationships or friendships. Okay, so trouble communicating or forming/maintaining relationships or friendships. That's a big, big piece, okay? If you have a lot of unhealed things that you have not dealt with, and again, your parents withdrew, or you were emotionally kind of punished based on, things that was going on in your childhood or even young adulthood, it may be really hard for you to have a meter of how to interact with people because you're so afraid of messing up. You're so afraid of being unaccepted. You're so afraid of losing someone or not being loved properly. So if this is showing up, it's likely the result of like what happened in your caregiving situation. Another one is that you may feel heavy emotions and be unsure how to cope. Okay, and so that's when you might feel really lost and not know what's next for you, not, be totally sure how to take care of yourself. And I just want to let you know that even your ability to look up a podcast, right, to stumble here, if you're reading personal development books, like you're on the right track. It's really important that you adopt a self-care practice and that you really dive into the self-awareness work. And I know that if you're here and you are an avid listener, you're doing that. And then if you want to step it up and really, really get into the nitty-gritty of the work, hiring a therapist or working with a coach is the next best thing that you could do for yourself, because being able to speak things that you've gone through and process out loud, one, it starts to help heal the body, but then a lot of awareness is brought to you as to what you want to change. And in coaching specifically, it really helps you get clear so that you can create the life that you really want to live. People don't realize that our emotions are what drive all of our actions. So all of the actions you take in your life and all of the actions you don't take in your life are based on the emotions that you're feeling. And the emotions that you're feeling are based on the subconscious and conscious thoughts that your brain is storing. Okay. So it's important that we clean all of that up and out, but first, bring awareness to it. So that way you can move through what's not working and get on the path to what is working to create your desired results in your life. Okay. You're never stuck. The life that you're at right now at this point doesn't have to be the life that you're living 5 years from now. Your life, even a year from now, can look totally different when you're willing to lean in and do the work. Okay? Another result of emotionally immature parents and how this might be showing up for you today as an adult is that you might withdraw or give up when things get hard. So you may not want to label yourself as a quitter, but if you do feel yourself wanting to just withdraw and give up because things are hard, it's likely because of the space that wasn't held for you as a child when things were challenging. You might have been very isolated or had to figure things out on your own or do things on your own. And that takes a toll as you're growing up. So even as an adult, as soon as things gets hard, your brain wants, your life to be really easy and simple. And so autopilot and doing the same things over and over again is one of the easiest ways for your brain to feel safe and secure, even if it's not serving you at the highest level. So if you're noticing that you do withdraw or want to give up or throw your hands up or just quit when things get hard or relationships get hard, it's likely a result of growing up in that environment of possibly emotionally immature parents. You might even hide emotions and then try to appear strong on the outside. This was totally me. I was disconnected from my emotions. I cried maybe once or twice a year. And when I would cry the whole day. I couldn't stop. And while that's still me, in the sense of if I start crying, I'm just going to cry the whole day. I cry way more often than I ever did after coaching, after I started my personal development and coaching journey. But it's really important that you notice just if you feel like you have to hide emotions and be strong. I really had the misconception that if I fell apart, so would everyone else in my life, because so many people were counting on me to be the strong one. And I just want to let you know, as hard as this may sound, this may sound really unattainable right now based on where you're at, but it's just not your job to rescue everybody else. It's your job to rescue yourself. And if you have children, rescuing yourself will help to change the trajectory of what they, are experiencing or maybe have experienced. And so a lot of things can shift when you are willing to rescue yourself first and just know you do not have to be strong for a bunch of different people. I think a lot of times for people who've experienced trauma or just hardship in their life, we feel responsible for a lot of different people. And I just want to remind you, it's just not your job. But I know how hard that is, because as many times as I was told that, it took years for me to finally get to a point where I really believed the people who told me that were right, that I didn't have to be the strong one for everybody else, that I really could just take care of myself. And I will tell you, it's so much better on this side than it was feeling like I was responsible for everybody and everything. Okay, sorry, I'm going through a little bit of a scratchy voice over here, so I apologize. Okay, some of the last things that you may be experiencing is that you have trouble holding space for other people, including yourself, and that you may unintentionally repeat cycles that were done to you if you do not practice self-awareness with intention. Okay, so that is the conclusion of the list. And again, I just want to remind you that if any part of it stuck out, if you're feeling triggered from any of it, if you're noticing any parts that you're unhappy with, I just want to remind you that when you're willing, that's the important word, willing to do the work, it can change everything, okay? And sometimes it takes time, but sometimes it doesn't even have to take a lot of time. It depends how coachable you are, how willing you are to change, how much work you're willing to do, how many emotions that are going to feel sucky that you're willing to feel. And the more that you just lean into the work you need to do, the better it will be and the faster it will happen. It's more so when our brain is super resistant and we're uncoachable and unteachable and we just resist all of the work. And, it's normal because our brain tries to stay, again, in patterns, in autopilot, so that life feels easy, even if we're not happy with the results we're creating in our life. And so the faster and more willing you are to just get started and call your brain out and, do the work that you need to do, the faster and the better things will be for you. It's again, it's the resistance that we usually end up dealing with that makes it 10 times harder. Okay. So if I can be of any help to you, if any of this podcast resonated and you're like, oh my God, I need help. I'm ready. I need to work on myself. I need to heal some things. I need to become aware of my emotions. I want to be more emotionally intelligent. Go on MacyRenee.com and schedule a free 60-minute consult. You and I will spend an hour just talking and getting to know where you are, what you're happy with in your life, what you're not happy with in your life. And then we'll talk about if coaching is a good fit and if I'm a good fit for you to move forward with. I have a few different offers. I work with people one-on-one. I have some group programs. I have programs based on if you're at the starter level and need to grow your awareness all the way to I'm pretty self-aware. I do a lot of work on myself. I'm ready to go higher than I've ever gone before. I have a range of everything in between, okay? So the best thing that you can do if you are ready or think that you're ready to start the work is to go to MacyRenee.com, schedule a free consult. We will talk about all things you and in your life, and then we will decide if coaching is a good fit and if it's something that you want to do in your life, okay? So you're just gonna leave with more clarity and with information, and then you get the autonomy to make the decision for yourself of whether or not you're ready for that or not, okay? So if I can be of any help, I would love to help you. I know that this work is life-changing. It has changed my life. It's changing my client's life, and I would love to be a part of your journey if we are the right fit. So I look forward to speaking with you whenever that intuition gut tells you to schedule a consult. And until then, I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at MacyRenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at MacyRenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.